Traders in Kano say businesses are gradually picking up since the presidential nod and the CBN's directive to banks on legal status of the old Naira notes. Trust TV's correspondent Idris Jibrin reports that although customers are still using point of sale to pay for transactions, the old 500 Naira and 1,000 Naira notes are now being accepted by traders. Let's take the report.
Across many parts of the commercial city of Kano, majority of traders say they have now resumed to collecting the old Naira notes following the CBN announcement. But some say the cash is not available in the market.
We have heard the news on the radio, but you see there is still no cash in the market. People are yet to start bringing out their money, but when people started bringing it out, we will collect.
According to traders in some market of Kano metropolis, most people are still not aware that CBN has directed the use of the old 500 and 1,000 Naira note, which is why some customers and traders alike are yet to start accepting it.
Whatever the CBN governor says is like the president, because he can't do it without the approval of the president. But you see, some people are still not accepting it. But we here in the market, if they bring the money to us, we will collect. Even now, I have accepted 10,000 Naira old note. And anyone that bring it to me, I will collect it.
Although people are still trooping across all commercial banks in Kano to get cash, but traders say less than 24 hours since the announcement, businesses are fast picking up in Kano, and that many people have complied to accepting the old notes.
Truly, because of this announcement, we have started collecting the old Naira notes, and businesses are picking up. And even those who are bringing goods to us from the village, once we call them, they will bring it because they know that there is cash now. We will just give them. So gradually, things are picking up here with us. Even now, I want to buy ingredients to take to my house, and I'm going to give them the old Naira note. So people are accepting it now.
At the moment, cash is still scarce in circulation, but most people believe that with the latest development, things will improve in the next coming days. Idris Jibrin, Trust TV News, Kano.
Now, directive of the Central Bank of Nigeria to commercial banks recognizing the old Naira notes as legal tender has elicited happiness among residents of the Federal Capital Territory. Trust TV's Kabir Lawal reports that the long silence of the Apex Bank since the Supreme Court order on March 3rd has left the residents confused. The report.
Central Bank of Nigeria in a statement on Monday recognized the use of the old 200, 500 and 1,000 Naira note as a legal tender till 31st December this year. It is a sigh of relief for many bank customers who find it hard to access their hard-earned deposits in the bank owing to the CBN's Naira redesign and cashless policy. Some bank customers said they are happy with the development, but government should avoid the kind of confusion their silence must have caused.
It's a good policy, but unfortunately it came late because people have suffered a lot. You know, you could hear people dying while going to get currency, while going to get cash, either at the ATM or the banking hall. It's quite unfortunate that despite the fact that many Nigerians, we in Nigeria have gone against this policy, and that CBN and with the Supreme Court decision almost close to a week plus now, and just yesterday CBN governor is coming out to tell the public that they can continue using the old currency.
Baba, I never collect, I never even see this money safe. I still reason and share, I still reason them, but because why I still reason and be say, you know, say before if God talk, we go wait for president. Now president never talk, but CBN don't talk. Sure, but I still reason if now be the cocoa.
Some said that the people really suffered from the cashless policy implementation, adding that many were subjected to unnecessary hardship.
According to what I hear yesterday, they say CBN say we could use the old Naira notes. And for the direction where we see where the thing they go, the thing no make sense. That means Nigeria know they move forward. Why it no make sense to me be say, I think say they have plan in the initial stage of introducing the new currency. But now coming in direction of stopping the old currency, bringing the new currency to come in existence. Unfortunately, yesterday night they said we should go back to the old currency. That means I don't see the government, whether the government have any good direction.
They are taking us back. Since they have already taken it out, let it remain out. The way forward is just to make sure that the new currency is being printed out more so that it will just circulate. I didn't succeed with getting money because everywhere they lock the gate and they are saying they are giving old currency, but yet there was no money. And I've been there for over 2 hours, so there's no need. I have to go back.
The Supreme Court had on March 3rd ordered that the old Naira notes remain legal tender till December 31st.
Despite the Central Bank of Nigerian directive to make the old currency a legal tender in the country, people are finding it very difficult, especially at the ATM machines, and they complain to us that the machine is not dispensing the new or the old currency, making life difficult for them. In Abuja, Kabir Lawal, Trust TV News.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kabir Lawal, for that report. We'll now join financial analyst who joins us virtually from Lagos, talking about Mukhtar Mohammed, to give reactions to some of these issues. Hello, Mukhtar. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on Daybreak this morning. Well, if you can hear me, you may just go ahead and give us your reaction. I mean, Nigerians have had to deal with the cash crunch for weeks, perhaps for months now. And we found ourselves in a situation where we don't have the old, neither do we have the new currency. And then all of a sudden, CBN now comes out to make a statement, use the old cash. So the suffering was unnecessary in the first place.
You hit the nail on the head. The suffering was unnecessary in the first place. The policy have finally come, and we all know that this policy was not well thought out. It was politically motivated. Like I always say, you don't play politics with your economy. We've seen the CBN finally destroying one of the most vibrant sector of Nigerian economy, the informal sector. We've seen the CBN send a lot of people into the unemployment market by this policy. We've seen untold hardship and loss of productivity among Nigerians by virtue of this policy. Like you say, we've seen people queue and lost their life also because of this policy. It's very, very unfortunate that a good policy that was not well thought out and was done for political reasons. And that is why we are suffering the way we are suffering. We've not seen the end, the negativity of this policy until we begin to get the data from the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, NBS. The former chairman of that, the former DG of that proposition, Yemi Kale, came out today and said that we have lost about 10 trillion to our GDP from the redesigned policy of the CBN. And that is the informal sector, which account to 23 trillion have been starved of funds for the past 3 months. We are only looking at the fund side. We are not even looking at the productivity, the loss of labor, the loss of means of livelihood, and the security implications that a lot of Nigerians have gone through because of a good policy that had underlying tunes. I'm really very disappointed.
All right, so Mukhtar, now the CBN says the old 500 naira and old 1,000 naira can be used. Now, before this policy, the economy wasn't doing very well. The economy was almost on its knees before this policy. And now Yemi Kale said yesterday that the GDP, will contract by at least 10 to 15 trillion naira in the first quarter. Where do we go from here? What can be done immediately to begin to repair whatever damage this policy must have caused?
Unfortunately, I don't think the present government or the CBN has the the resources or the intelligence to do anything because of their body language. You could see a CBN that should come out to apologize to Nigerians and begin to tell Nigerians of palliative measures to lessen their burdens. But we see a CBN that is arrogantly not even saying anything, thinking that the policy was was not successful because of sabotage. And a government that is already out of power, whose body language is saying, look, I just want to leave. I'm not interested in anything that is happening. So there's much to be desired. I don't see this present government or the CBN doing anything. Because when you talk about doing something to alleviate the suffering, it means pumping in more cash into the system, making sure there's availability of cash in the shortest possible times. Even after the CBN made this pronouncement on Monday, up to yesterday, there's still rationing of the old note, not even the new notes in banking hall. So it shows that the CBN may just be playing to the gallery. The independence of the CBN has been called to question since the present CBN governor, Governor Emefiele, came to power. And it has caused the CBN independence to question. Remember, after the Supreme Court judgment, the CBN did not make any pronouncement until the presidency made a pronouncement by the president. That is when the CBN came out and said, we will accept the 500 and the 1,000 naira as a legal tender. Remember, before that, the CBN came out with a statement which was credited to the CBN government in trying to maybe statement about the incoming president. They were quickly came to the press to give a disclaimer to that. But when it came to the policy that affect ordinary Nigeria, they were silent until the presidency came out with a statement. So unfortunately, looking at this CBN, the immediate thing to be done was pumping cash into the system. And it comes with its own challenge, which has to do with inflation. But as it stands now, you've already inflation is already going to be very high because the cost of goods and services have gone up because of the shortage of cash. So we're already in a deep problem that it will take the ingenuity of the incoming administration to do something about it.
Okay, there are still other policies that are still standing, such as the cash withdrawal limits and the limits on deposits for the old cash. Do you see this also affecting this process in making sure that we, we find stability in the system?
Yes, if you want to do the right thing, you are supposed to, with the kind of challenges that you have seen, you are supposed to remove all those limits and make sure the economy flow. When there's stability, you begin to introduce limits. Remember, again, there's a court judgment that said the CBN does not have the right to fine you on the amount of money that you collect from the bank. So you have the right to collect your money. They have no right to fine anybody because the only people that can set fine of is a competent court of law in Nigeria. The CBN does not have a right to fine people for collecting their money. So that is already there. But again, it is there until somebody activated by taking the bank or the CBN to court. And maybe this time they will be able, they will not apply it immediately. So definitely that is there. About the limit in terms of depositing of the new Naira note or the old Naira note also. That is done for political reason, we all know. Because we've been made to understand that the old Naira notes are most of the notes that the politicians were keeping behind for vote buying. And that was the reason behind this redesigning policy. But that accusation is neither here nor there. As it stands now, if the CBN wants to do things right, if the CBN wants the economy to come back, not just the CBN, the federal government, then it's high time you remove all these barriers and make sure there's a smooth running of the economy, because a lot of businesses have gone out. A lot of people are still suffering. A lot of manpower is being wasted in queues. in the banking hall. I mean, it's only in Nigeria that you see such things. And this is not government money. It's their own money, money that they work for, money that they are entitled to. And it's not that you are looking for a currency that is outside the control of the Nigerian government. You are talking about naira, not dollar, not pounds. It's very, very disturbing situation. And again, if history is beginning to repeat itself, history always repeats itself when it comes to President Buhari. 1984, you have the control price. 2023, you have the scarcity of naira notes.
All right, Mukhtar, aside the suffering by ordinary Nigerians and all of that, where does the banking sector go from here? Because during this period, the banks, a lot of them, their flaws came to the fore. In fact, I saw a video yesterday on social media where people were taking out time to, cast aspersions on each bank. They'll call the name of the bank and say something about it. And then in this past 1 month, thereabout, the banking halls have been empty. Where does it go from here as its services, its staff, and all of that?
I think where it goes from here, there's nothing bad with the banking hall to be empty, because globally banking halls are always empty because everybody have gone cashless. That's why we say the policy was a nice policy. But what we see here is infrastructural decay. When we don't have the infrastructure to take the number of people that came cashless. And that's why you had the challenge that we had. Ordinarily, the banking hall should be empty naturally if I can do my transaction at the comfort of my house. But again, we have to come to the challenge that we pointed out. We are driving an informal sector that is largely driven by cash. It will take time to drive this informal sector into a formal, to begin to accept cashless. And also, even in the formal sector, about 30% of that formal sector also is driven by cash. When you look at the petroleum sector, especially the filling stations, they accept cash also. They deal mostly on cash. So definitely, the banking hall being empty is not a challenge, but it's just that the system being put in place to guide to help was not effective enough because the infrastructure is not there. What I expect the CBN to do was to come together with the banking, come together with the Nigerian banking inter-settlement company, sit down with them and begin to build infrastructures that will definitely accept all Nigerian when you want to do transaction cashless. Because what we've seen is that before we used to have maybe about 20 million Nigerians doing digital transaction, cashless transaction, using POS, using ATM. But now what do we see? We saw almost about 80 million at a particular time trying to do it. So the system could not handle it. And that's why we've had all those issues that we are having. And this is boiled down to improper planning. Because if CBN say they have been thinking this thought for the past 2 years, I expected that they should have been thinking it with the banking sector and telling them to improve their payment system, and they won't have the challenges that we are having now. So definitely, in terms of the bottom line of the banks, I don't think their bottom line will be largely affected. When you look at that, this transaction comes with fees, and this fee also goes to the bank, and also the government also would have enjoyed it also, because if you look at what the MBS is talking about, 116% in terms of value-added tax for every. That means for every transaction Nigerians do through the cashless, the digital platform, they pay the value-added tax to the government. So the two people that have benefited from this shortage of cash has been the government and the banks. And unfortunately, the people that is supposed to be the key driver of both the banks and the government, both are the ones that are suffering.
Okay, Mukhtar, why can't we have more of the new cash printed? Why are we going back to the old cash? Why can't CBN just make available the new cash right now?
I think the CBN is not telling us all truth. They are not telling us. They are just telling us they have the capacity. I, for personally, think that the Nigerian printing company did not have the capacity to print the number of notes that the CBN thought they would be able to print, and that has evolved into technical issues, and that is why they are not able to have those new notes circulated. And also, you mustn't forget also that the CBN also made it clear to us that even if the new note comes, we will not have it in circulation like we used to have the old note. Remember, before that time, they said they have about 3-point-something trillion of 3-point-something trillion of the old note printed, and about 2.3 trillion of that note was outside the banking space. And when they came up with this policy, they said they've retrieved about 1-point-something trillion, and they were looking for about I think about 700 trillion to come back to the banking space. And so they made us believe that for every maybe 10,000 naira that you return for the old currency, you were going to get less than that in terms of the new currency. Then the other ones will be channeled through the digital platform. But what we saw was that for every 10,000 naira you gave to them, they gave you only 1,000. And so that's why I think we had the challenges that we had. And also they didn't have the capability to print enough of the new naira note that they promised Nigerians. Remember, before now, they made it categorically clear that the ATM machines will be dispensing only 200 naira notes, no more 1,000 or 500. But up to this moment, even when the ATM had to dispense money, they dispense the 1,000 naira note instead of the 200 naira note as promised by the CBN. So that shows you that there was a challenge somewhere that the CBN may have not emphasized that and did not come out clear to tell Nigerians that, sorry, we cannot meet up with the demands. And that's the challenge. I think they should own up to this, and so that we can move forward. Going back to the old notes, even if the old notes are not available, because if you go to the bank say they've returned this note to the CBN, and the CBN said they destroyed some of these notes.
Mukhtar, yes, even the Daily Trust newspaper says CBN yet to release old notes to banks. And the banks that our reporters went to yesterday said it was the ones that they had before now that they were giving out. Why is it that the CBN is yet to release these old notes to the banks?
I wish I'm the spokesperson of the CBN or the CBN governor, then I will categorically be able to say why. But again, it comes with a lot of logistics. Remember, when you talk about currency, one of the tools to control inflation is mopping up of liquidity in the system. That's reduction in terms of flow of liquidity, especially physical cash. So I think the CBN may have been looking at the technicality involved. How much of the physical cash are they going to release, the old note? How much of the new note do they have in circulation? So I think that is the challenge. Then they want to see how they can guide against inflation, which is already high. Again, it just shows that they refuse to, when this judgment was done, if they really wanted to comply with this judgment, they would have been looking at this, and they would have been, it wouldn't take them, it's not rocket science, up to a week for them to begin to look at all this technicality of releasing this money. But again, remember that some people say that the old notes are also in the hands of politicians.
Okay, I'm going to interject because of our time, right? And I need you to give me a quick response on this. That can the presidency actually absolve itself? Can the president absolve himself from what has happened to this issue of monetary policy? There are those who are saying that the CBN governor wasn't acting by himself, but we saw, the president by that statement saying he didn't ask anyone not to obey Supreme Court order and the rest of them. So what's your take on that?
The presidency cannot absolve themselves. Remember in that judgment, the CBN was not even party to it. The judgment was all about this federal government should instruct the CBN. Because even in the CBN Act, when it comes to currency, it has to go through the presidency for approval. So that is why the government took the federal government to court. Because if you take the CBN, the independence of the judiciary has to do with separation of power. And when it comes to the CBN, monetary policies, decisions are not decisions that can be influenced by court. So definitely that is where, and that judgment was given to the federal government. The federal government in turn should have ordered the CBN to make sure they abide to that judgment. They didn't do that until there was protest from lawyers, people planning to down to before they now respond. So they cannot absorb themselves from it at all. They were part and partner. Remember, the CBN governor keep telling us, I spoke to Mr. President, I spoke to Mr. President. And every step he has taken, he always makes us to know that I saw Mr. President have agreed, Mr. President have agreed, Mr. President have agreed. So they cannot absorb themselves at all.
All right, thank you so much, Mukhtar Mohammed, financial analyst, for joining us on Daybreak and sharing insight with us on this subject. We appreciate that.
My pleasure, thank you.
All right, now time for us to take a quick breather. When we return, we'll continue our discussion on the program. Join us again.